Hi everybody, so nice to be here with you on the GlobalLight Broadcast for November. I've got a lot I want to talk about, so let's jump right in. This segment, my topic is going to be about inflammation. This is a really important conversation today. Research is now showing that being exposed to chronic stress is rewiring the brain to favor the types of activities that favor chronic stress. Now, if you heard that, that's a wow moment. And I want to expand on it. I want to break it down and I want to put it back together so that you understand what that means for you personally and how you are managing and what you can do with that going forward. Inflammation it's a disaster for every organ in your body, including your brain. And research today shows that depression is inflammation in your brain. Autism is inflammation in your brain. ADD, dementia, all considered inflammation in the brain. In fact, there was a documentary that I would highly recommend you take a look at if you get the opportunity. It's on Amazon right now. It's Dr. Terry Wahl, W-A-H-L. Documentary is called Defying All Odds. She is a doctor who was diagnosed with progressive multiple sclerosis. And if you don't know what that is, it's horrific. You can have blinding nerve pain. It's excruciating at times, and it is not something that you ever want to have to linger from. So she knew what was happening in her body. She was following all of the standard protocols, and she wasn't getting any better. And she had progressed to living for 4 years in a reclining wheelchair. She healed herself. She is now biking, hiking, training for a marathon. She is in Western medicine a miracle. We believe in miracles all day long, don't we? Now, the thing that I love about this is that a lot of times, I know a lot of doctors who have left and gone to functional medicine because they say one system is broken, here's the other system. And so it creates divide, and I understand that. The protocols don't agree with each other. They can't get the funding for the clinical trials and so forth. And I completely understand and respect that. What's miraculous about Dr. Terry Wahl is that she stayed. She stayed in Western medicine. She's still practicing. And she's working with the board. She's on several boards. She's getting clinical trials done. And they are verifying her protocol, which is treating inflammation through diet. Now that's astounding. So she is staying within the system, trying to change the system. And her story is incredible. Again, really bringing into play how capable our bodies are of healing themselves, how much we don't know and can't control, but our bodies do. And given the right formulas, the right supplements, the right diet, and so forth, she put all of this into a documentary over the years that she has been working with this. And now her protocols are being tested in dementia, depression, Alzheimer's, obviously MS, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, lupus, thyroid disease, basically saying anything that is degenerative is inflammation based, and you treat inflammation. Now that's revolutionary. In the US alone, 70% of people are clinically considered overweight and 40% are obese, eating a standard diet that is highly inflammatory, lots of sugars, lots of starches, lots of refined oils. Dr. Daniel Amen, A-M-E-N, is a psychiatrist. In fact, the American Journal of Medicine calls him the #1 psychiatrist in America. He's put out several books. If you haven't read any of his books, I would highly recommend that you do. He wrote Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. That was an extraordinary book to read. And he published 2 studies that show as your weight goes up, the size and function of your brain goes down. The size and function of your brain goes down. The fat on your body creates inflammation, it stores toxins, and it converts healthy hormones into unhealthy forms of estrogen, which studies are showing lead to cancer. So Dr. Amen believes inflammation is responsible for over half the mental illness that we see today. Over half. So that's where I want to go. The diet conversation is still, a lot of people are learning to eat an anti-inflammatory diet for their own healing and well-being. But what it's doing to your brain and how we are functioning in the world, how we perceive the world and how we function in the world is where I'm going with inflammation. So Dr. Amen told a story that was actually a really funny story about a couple that was sent to him from a therapist that had been going to marital therapy for 3 years and they just weren't getting anywhere. And the husband, had been diagnosed with mixed personalities with narcissistic and antisocial features. He says it's doctors speak for saying he's a jerk. That basically he did not exhibit the capacity to show empathy for his wife or others. So this is important. Why is that, right? We don't know what's causing the inflammation in the brain, and we're not tying it together. We're treating it with specific specialties and coding with drugs. So Dr. Amen decided to have both their brains scanned. The scans showed her brain looked normal, the husband's brain looked like it was full of holes. And basically that means lack of sufficient blood flow, which is what your brain looks like, he says, when you're a drug addict. The husband didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, and after a while it was discovered that he worked in a furniture plant where he was stripping furniture. So he was using organic solvents, right? A known environmental toxin. So from the exposure to the toxins, it was affecting his brain. And the effect on his brain changed how he was perceiving the world and how he was showing up, how capable he was to be able to hear his wife, to relate to his wife. He was not that way before, but he started to decline after working at this job. And after 5 years, it had declined so much that they thought their marriage was in trouble. So rather than him being a jerk, he actually had a sick brain. So research is now showing that being exposed to chronic stress, so not just environmental toxins, right, not just diet, but being exposed to chronic stress in the world. That's the world right now, post-COVID, and we're not really even post-COVID. We're kind of post-phase 1 and 2 of COVID while everyone's still arguing about COVID. So we are in a chronic state of stress in the world, all over the world, and we're divided about it, right? That's fair, right? So research is showing that now being exposed to chronic stress is rewiring the brain to favor the types of activities that favor chronic stress. So did you get that? Here's what that means. It basically means that when you're in chronic stress, your brain begins to look for the activities that you were doing that favored the chronic stress, and it wants you to do more of it. That's a little frightening. So let me get into it further. Studies out of coming out of Japan on forest bathing. Forest bathing is simply getting out in nature. 93% of people live in big cities in Japan, and I think it's pretty close to that in the US as well. They spend their time indoors. 93% live in the city and spend over 90% indoors, living in big cities far removed from nature. And so studies are showing that being outside for even 20 minutes a week in nature is lowering levels of stress. That can also be putting a plant in your office if you just can't get to nature, or putting a photo of a plant in your home, in your office, in your bedroom. Our brains don't know the difference. So seeing a photo of a plant in nature that you love gives you the same response factor that your body begins to lower out of stress. So it's shifting from sympathetic into parasympathetic drive. Isn't that remarkable? So Dr. Austin Perlmutter, who is a board-certified internal medicine doctor, notes that chronic stress disables the prefrontal cortex. Okay? Prefrontal cortex is where we make our decisions. So chronic stress disables the prefrontal cortex. The neurons shrivel up when exposed to chronic stress. And in the amygdala, now the amygdala, if I turned sideways, prefrontal cortex, amygdala is, if you go to your ear, sort of inside into the center of your brain, you have the pituitary, and behind it is the amygdala. The amygdala, the cells expand. So prefrontal cortex shrinks, brain cells shrivel. Amygdala, they expand. They create more dendritic branches, creating more connection. You don't want that in the amygdala. In essence, what that actually means is being in chronic stress is rewiring brains to favor the type of activities that create chronic stress. It means that it kills the brain cells that help you make decisions, and it makes brain cells grow that are in the fight or flight center of your brain, where you can be angry and divisive, and you can run or you can fight. So think about that for a second, right? This is where I'm going. Dr. Perlmutter's reports are validating Dr. Amen's reports in that chronic stress creates inflammation in the brain, and that inflammation shrivels the prefrontal cortex of your brain, rendering you unable to make decisions and think clearly, and expands and grows the part of your brain where you make rash or fight or flight, defend yourself, always angry, always positioning yourself for division, which in today's society of chronic stress looks like constant anger, constant separation. Are you starting to put this together? So there's a little more I want you to take in, and then we'll talk more about it. Research is also now showing that our negative memories do the same thing. Why? Because our brains have no concept of time. If you relive your negative memories. So if you position yourself to say that this is my story, this is what happened to me, this is who I am, this is why things don't work, you are constantly reliving and recycling that memory. There's no judgment in that. I'm saying we all have negative memories. It skews us to how we perceive the world and our safety. And so what was intended to protect us, now I'm putting my clinical hypnotherapist hat on, what was intended to protect us, right? Our subconscious mind looks and says, okay, we're going to store that, and we're going to store that as a really important one that's going to stay close to the surface here when we're scanning for, how we can match what we perceive in the world to what's stored in our memories. This might not keep us safe. We don't want to do this again. We don't want to be near this again. So the more we do that, the more we're causing inflammation. That was revolutionary. Science, psychiatry, and neurology is now validating inflammation in the brain. So we are talking about the actual practicality of how we create our reality and how we create the world around us. It is literally being validated now. And we need to shift out of it's this person's fault, it's that person's fault, it's this organization. So I'm not saying don't stand up or against. I'm saying consider not standing against everything, and consider instead now what it is you stand for. Spin it positive and make a difference. Because every time you engage with anyone, anywhere, whether that's on social media, whether that's in your relationship, whether that's in the grocery store. If that interaction is based in divisiveness, in chronic stress, then you are responsible for creating more inflammation in your own body that is rendering you unable to make decisions and think clearly, shriveling the neurons in your prefrontal cortex, and feeding the amygdala to look for more chronic stress, divisiveness, and anger. Did you get that? That's massive. That's just massive. That means we have choice. Now, as a clinical hypnotherapist, I completely understand that that's our go-to sometimes. That's just our pattern. We all have it. We all have our things. Whether, we've got our pet peeves, and we've all got them if we're honest. So the key here is just be honest. Be honest about what gets you going. Recognize how often it gets you going and start to do something about it to change it. So in clinical hypnotherapy, right, because when I'm researching all of this, I'm listening as a clinical hypnotherapist. I am not a doctor. I'm not here to say this does this. But when they say it and their research shows it, then I am excited and repeating it and delivering it. And then I take it one step further into clinical hypnotherapy and say, this is why this works. Because if our own memories are causing inflammation in our brain, then being able to go back to those critical incidents, being able to bring resources to them so that you don't lose your memory, but you no longer have the emotional charge from it. You have resources that you can go back and say, I don't feel that way about that anymore. I just didn't know this or this. And it's different for everyone. The resources are different for everyone. It's custom. And then you start your own self-practice delivering those therapeutic suggestions. You now are shifting into parasympathetic drive, so your body is out of fight or flight. You stay out of fight or flight long enough, what happens? Your cells regenerate. And if those cells are regenerating with the receptors of the environment the last cells lived in, and you're in parasympathetic drive, then they have hormones seeking connection, seeking love, seeking peace, seeking community, right? Versus seeking anger and divisiveness. And that is up to you. That's where you are responsible for creating your own reality and your own perception of the world and the world around you. Your world is your world. You are that powerful. This to me was something that I thought was absolutely worth dedicating a segment to and sharing. That every interaction you have choice. And if you find it's happening because I did it again and I didn't even realize it, no problem. That's your pattern. Recognize the pattern. Start to bring some resources to what it is. See a hypnotherapist if you can. Look at the work that's available to you in order to go back and change so that the subconscious mind now becomes positive dominant, not negative dominant. You don't walk around in chronic stress wondering if you're going to be okay and if you're going to be safe. You then begin to be in a positive dominant perception where you can bring so much good to the world. And then you're doing your work that you came here to do. You also see the world as a better place. You contribute to the world and you help others do the same. So every time that you hear things like be the change you want to see in the world, that literally is talking about the health of your brain. That's how I hear it. And you are responsible for the health of your brain, not just from diet, right? The conversation has been diet up until now. But inflammation in the brain through your own thought process and how your cells are reborn and what they're seeking in the environment that they're born into is revolutionary to me. And none of that has anything to do with anyone else's influence over you but you. That is something I thought was worthy of sharing. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you in the studio. I brought my fancy little Halloween mug to say Happy Halloween to everyone. To us Celts, that's our new year. And let me tell you, this one has been something. So I am very much looking forward to turning over into the next year and seeing where we go. I am actively starting to see clients again. Thank you so much for your patience, for all of you that wrote into me and wanted to start doing some work. I really appreciate that. I'll be in touch soon. And I wish all of you health, really good health. Healthy brains, healthy minds. We need you. Your work here really matters. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope what I have brought made you consider your life and how you show up and how you look at the world. And if there are things that you would like to investigate that I can assist you with from a clinical hypnotherapist perspective, I am happy and honored to do so. You can reach me at the website, megadamsonhypnotherapy.com. Thanks, and have a wonderful rest of your show, and I'll see you next month. Bye for now.